Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive paradigm shift in the world of computing. We're putting two absolutely fascinating machines head-to-head, the legendary mid-2012 MacBook Pro and the futuristic 2026 M5 model. In tech years, this gap is practically a century. We aren't just looking at a speed bump here, we're uncovering a fundamental transformation in how computers are designed, built, and used. Let's dive right into that 14-year gap. Over a decade of intense engineering separates these two, and literally every single component has evolved. We're moving from this golden era of modular repairability, where, let's be real, your screwdriver was your best friend, and dropping a tiny screw on the carpet was your biggest fear, straight into an era of hyper-integrated, closed systems built for sheer, unadulterated performance. The physical contrast between these two really tells the whole story. You've got the reliable, chunky aluminum workhorse of 2012 up against the sleek, almost minimalist 2026 M5. One is an absolute tinkerer's dream, while the other, it's a sealed, silent, AI-accelerated vault. The physical design perfectly mirrors the technological shift we're about to explore. So, let's start with part one, a clash of philosophies. When you look at the raw specs, the leap is just staggering. We're jumping from a 22-nanometer Intel architecture all the way down to a 3-nanometer Apple Silicon ARM process. And to put that into perspective, 3 nanometers is roughly the width of just a few strands of human DNA. Plus, we go from maybe 6 or 7 hours of battery life to a wild 24 hours on the M5, trading older DDR3 and SATA tech for unified memory and blazing fast NVMe. It really all boils down to a fundamental philosophical dichotomy. Do you want own and physically modify your hardware, or do you just want a perfectly optimized appliance? Apple designed the 2012 model for longevity through user upgrades. The M5, though, completely shifted the goalposts toward maximum efficiency, high-end AI processing, and a remarkably thin, unchangeable footprint. All right, let's move on to part two, under the hood comparison. Taking a look at the classic 2012 Intel setup, it's what we call a distributed architecture. The processor actually has to communicate across a motherboard to reach a separate GPU, separate RAM, and a separate storage drive. It's kind of like a city with terrible traffic. Every single time data travels across these distinct physical pathways, it hits red lights, which adds latency and drains a ton of power. Now, to grasp the massive leap of the 2026 model, we've got to talk about the system on a chip, or SoC. The SoC basically takes that sprawling, traffic-jammed motherboard architecture and throws it completely out the window. Instead, it takes all those distinct parts and bakes them together onto one single, unified piece of silicon. And that brilliantly illustrates the whole M5 philosophy. You've got the CPU, advanced GPUs, up to an 18-core neural engine, hardware ray tracing, and dedicated media engines, all jammed right next to each other. By bringing everything under one roof, the M5 practically eliminates the latency of the 2012 model, drastically lowers the heat output, and gives you way higher sustained performance. A huge part of that efficiency comes from unified memory. Back in 2012, your CPU and GPU used completely separate memory paths. But the M5 uses a single memory pool shared simultaneously by the CPU, GPU, and neural engine. It completely kills the data commute. Information isn't being copied back and forth anymore. It's just instantly accessible to whatever part of the chip needs it, making switching between heavy apps unbelievably fast. And the data pipelines? Just as impressive. Even if you maxed out your 2012 Mac with a SATA SSD, you were capping out at around 500 megabytes per second. The M5's integrated NVMe storage handles several gigabytes of throughput every single second. It seriously makes the 2012 look archaic, letting you do things like boot up instantly or scrub through an 8K video timeline as smoothly as flipping a page in a book. Of course, we can't really talk about modern computing without bringing up AI. The 2012 model completely predated modern AI workloads, but the M5 is practically built around them. Packing a 16-core neural engine, it handles heavy machine learning entirely on the device. This means all those Apple Intelligence features happen incredibly fast, and crucially, they stay totally private, because your data never even has to leave your laptop. Okay, let's transition into part three, the modern user experience. We've got to start with this number 24. A staggering 24 hours of video playback is possible on certain M5 configurations. Just think about that for a second. You could leave for a weekend trip, completely forget your charger at home, and still be totally fine. That absolutely dwarfs the 6 to 7 hours you'd squeeze out of a brand new battery back in 2012. Visually, the experience is just night and day. The 2012 LCD screen was great for its era, sure, but it lacked modern dynamic range. Blacks often looked kinda gray. Then you have the complex layers of the M5's mini LED technology, using thousands of tiny dimming zones to create impossibly deep blacks and super vibrant colors for its XDR display. This liquid Retina XDR display delivers true high dynamic range for just eye-popping contrast and professional color accuracy. Plus, it rocks ProMotion up to 120 Hz. For you, the user, this means scrolling through a web page or watching UI animations feels buttery smooth in a way the 2012 screen simply couldn't physically manage. Looking at connectivity, both setups perfectly reflect the needs of their times. The 2012 model offered a legendary port selection, built-in Ethernet, USB-A, and remember these? An optical drive for burning CDs. The M5 trades those legacy connections for just massive bandwidth, giving us Thunderbolt 4 or 5, HDMI, and SDXC slot, and thankfully, the very welcome return of the MagSafe magnetic charging port. Now, here's exactly why repair enthusiasts still absolutely revere the 2012 model today. Literally, with just a screwdriver, you could pop off the bottom case, snap in more RAM, drop in a massive new SSD, or swap out a dying battery all by yourself. It gave you total ownership and absolute control over the lifespan of your own hardware. Conversely, the M5 is a sealed vault. 0 user upgradable internals. Memory and storage are soldered down tight. But as our sources point out, this is a very deliberate trade-off. By locking down the system, you get dramatically higher performance, and perhaps best of all, a laptop that stays whisper quiet. No more sounding like a literal jet engine taking off when you open a heavy application or load up 50 browser tabs. Which brings us to part 4, which philosophy wins? The sources make it really clear that both of these philosophies still have a place today, depending entirely on who you are. The 2012 remains the ultimate project machine. If you love tinkering or learning hardware repair, it's pretty unbeatable. But if you need a modern professional tool for things like 8K video editing, compiling massive code bases, or heavy 3D rendering, the M5 is simply in a class of its own. As the source material beautifully summarizes it, the mid-2012 represents the peak and really the end of a highly repairable era. It is an undisputed classic. The M5, on the other hand, represents the absolute cutting edge of integrated silent efficiency. So, I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder from today's explainer. In our relentless pursuit of ultimate performance, whisper quiet operation, and multi-day battery life, have we sacrificed our fundamental ability to tinker and repair? And more importantly, is that a worthwhile trade-off for the future of computing? Thanks for exploring this massive technological leap with us today.